Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. Let's discuss Team USA's loss to Team Canada in the Four Nations face-off. Wasn't sure whether I wanted to discuss this tournament, and uh, it really, really delivered as far as hype and fanfare. And I think just first of all, hopefully this is good for the game of hockey, and so as far as providing a little bit more notoriety to the sport. I definitely think overall it was a good job. Of course, nothing's ever going to be perfect. I mean, I think it was only four nations. I think with the Olympics coming up next season, that will be really exciting where you're getting all the countries involved. And that for me, I would think is going to be larger. But this really was big. And, you know, we'll see what comes of it. As far as the game, Canada beats USA in overtime by a score of 3-2. The game-winning goal scored by Connor McDavid. We're going to talk about some things here. Rangers slanted, of course, and that was part of my thinking too. If this game, to me, there is Ranger involvement, no doubt, as far as the outcome of this game, and it's not good. You don't want to make too much of it, but look, like this was a tournament where these players were trying their absolute hardest, right? This was no all-star game. I'm not going to make a big deal about things like that. This was actual competition. And I guess first off, I'll talk about more from a USA-Canada lens and that rivalry. This was very reminiscent in a lot of ways of the 2010 Olympics in Vancouver. The fact that the USA won in the preliminary round, a big win for sure, but one that was not an elimination game, one that you kind of knew that those two teams might play each other again. And in the big one, granted, it wasn't like a blowout win in either event. It was an overtime win both times, but Canada gets the win, that time by Sidney Crosby, this time by Connor McDavid. So, at that time, Crosby was really, the number one guy. And, Crosby, it's amazing what he's still doing at his age now. But Connor McDavid has taken over as really the face of the game. And again, obviously there's variables, but I mean, McDavid has been over the last, at least 5 years, a player that even a novice hockey fan knows who Connor McDavid is. And he gets the game winning goal. So just a lot of parallels and similarities there, which was why I wasn't overly excited by USA winning the game in Montreal. Yes, it was cool. Yes, you had the 3 fights in 9 seconds. JT Miller involved in one of them. But I'm thinking the way this is playing out, it's hard to beat a team twice, especially in this scenario and the way that this played out. And again, USA was very, very close to winning. Jordan Binnington was fantastic, especially in overtime, made big save after big save to keep this game tied. So it's not to say that, hey, one thing goes different and USA wins, but they didn't win the game. I thought that Canada, I thought they were the slightly better team in this game, but not by that much. Let's now talk about, I guess, the Rangers, and then we'll go into what happened in the game. The Rangers in this tournament were not good, and we can talk about all of them if we want. I mean, I guess we'll get it first out the way. Like Mika Zibanejad was on Sweden, and he was okay. He scored a goal against Finland. He had a pretty big role in that team, which that in and of itself isn't great. The fact that he was basically like he was basically number one center on Sweden. And I didn't think he wasn't bad, but he wasn't great. I felt like he kind of lagged behind in certain ways, but did make contributions. And again, was someone that really was one of their top, minute getters, if you will, time on ice guys for Sweden. Vakanainen played a bit role on Finland. Was okay in the first two games. I thought he struggled a little bit against Canada. But he is what he is. Third pairing defenseman on the Rangers. And, he was all right. Not going to make a big thing about that. Team USA is where I really want to discuss mostly. And the first one that comes to mind in a bad way, and really all of them in their own ways did, but Adam Fox was horrific, really, really bad. I thought basically all tournament long. You can make some arguments here and there that maybe the eye test may have been worse than maybe the analytics. And Fox does typically grade out well analytically, but just watching him, we know he's slow to begin with. But man, like this went from someone I believe Adam Fox was part of, and Zibanejad as well for Sweden. The way they laid this out was there was an initial roster, like an initial, I don't know, 6 to 8 players. I think it might have even been as little as honestly 6 that automatically made the team a while ago. And I know Zibanejad was that for Sweden. I believe Fox might have been for USA as well. That is to say that now, to me, going into next year's Olympics, I don't think Adam Fox is a lock to make that team. Now, certainly, as I speak right now, yeah, he'll probably make it, but I don't know. He went from starting this tournament being initially paired with Jacob Slavin in maybe not necessarily number one pair role, but at least like a top four role, pretty securely. And when it started out, he was the power play one quarterback of the power play. Now, in part, let's keep this in mind: Quinn Hughes he was not in this tournament. He was injured for Vancouver. They weren't able to have him healthy enough to play, right? So that is part of it, but it makes it even worse almost. So Fox very quickly, right in that first game, they put Zach Werenski with the number one power play. And Fox, he did not play with Jacob Slavin. After the beginning, that was it. He mostly played with Noah Hannafin the rest of the way, but he basically played the least of the defensemen for Team USA, including Jake Sanderson. I thought Jake Sanderson, who had a big goal in this championship game against Canada, I thought Sanderson was more impressive. Fox was really getting sheltered minutes. Yeah, he played the least by at least 2.5, almost 3 minutes. No, I guess I'll say 2.5 minutes. He was a no doubt about it third pair defenseman. That's all they were comfortable with him being. And he played a very big role in the tying goal by Canada and the winning goal by Canada. Very disappointing. We give Ryan Lindgren a lot of shit, and deservedly so. But I have mentioned at times, Adam Fox deserves some as well. He has not really been very good this year. And I don't know when the turning point was. I think it's sometime last season. And I'll say, because he did get hurt in that Sebastian Aho collision early last season, but I felt like he ended up being fine once he got back to me. It's really the knee on knee in the first round against Washington. What was it? Nick Jensen, I think, was the defenseman. And really since then, I don't know. I just haven't seen the same player. And it's really, really disappointing for Fox. He's the one that stands out more than anyone because of the importance that he has to the Rangers as well. Some of these other players, in the case of like JT Miller, was just reacquired. Chris Kreider, he's kind of on the way out at some point. Trocheck's role on this USA team wasn't much, but Fox was really, really bad. It was hard to defend, really, like in terms of even if you're very pro Adam Fox, and it sucks too. I mean, I really, local guy from Long Island, grew up a Ranger fan, would have loved for him to have done well. It didn't happen. Elsewhere, USA wise, JT Miller, not great, I would say overall. Early in the tournament, I thought that he was doing some of the little things, as we've discussed with the Rangers since he's been back. And, I feel like that was there. And I think his plus minus reflected that in a positive way. But I just feel like even he would say not great for him. I just felt, and look, he was mainly on a third line role. He wasn't playing with the top guys. He was still playing with talent, but he wasn't playing with the best. But still, this is someone that has really been one of the best players in the league the last couple of years with Vancouver. And so for him, he was probably, and this is setting it's a low bar. He was the best of the Ranger bunch, but he, played a bit of a negative role in that tying goal for Canada, as well as Adam Fox. They were kind of connected in that. Vincent Trocheck, I didn't think he was great, and clearly I think he's dealing with something clearly, a bit of a hand or wrist injury, one that caused him to leave the game slightly against Sweden the other night in the third game that USA played. And then in this one, there was a moment in time when you saw him kind of looking at it and flexing it. And So I don't know what that means. We'll discuss the end of the episode, just sort of previewing the Rangers coming back and that. But with Trocheck, he was relied upon as a top penalty killer for them, a guy that can win faceoffs. I just felt like for him, I like his game less and less as the tournament went on. I thought early on, I was like, all right, like hit like Trocheck and Miller as like a PK duo, like again, blocking shots. Like, I felt like there were things that, because Trocheck's role was not to score goals. He was a fourth line guy the whole way through, basically, who would come in to take faceoffs when needed. But yeah, for him, it wasn't great. And he took a bad penalty. It didn't result in the goal for Canada, but the one penalty taken in this game was by Vincent Trocheck. And then Chris Kreider. Kreider was healthy scratch in the first two games. Scored a goal actually 35 seconds into the game against Sweden, which was really nice to see. And it's always a reminder that Kreider is capable of that. He's always capable of, like, in a moment, doing something that maybe you wouldn't think he would do. And so, but he was bad. He was very out of place. He only played 6 minutes and 25 seconds. He actually played less than Matthew Tkachuk. Matthew Tkachuk was hurt. Matthew Tkachuk basically played a full first period and then was basically done early in the second, and actually still played more than Chris Kreider. So he had the least role of anyone. And they basically played him over Kyle Connor. And that is a questionable decision when you consider the fact that you knew Matthew Tkachuk was certainly hurt. That's a risk. And Kyle Connor didn't look good in the first three games, but this is someone that, just based on merit, is better than Kreider in terms of a top six player. I understand that Kreider, in theory, provides maybe more special teams value than Kyle Connor maybe theoretically would. But this goes back to me just the player selection. Tage Thompson should have been on this team. No question about it. The Buffalo Sabres center Tage Thompson, because at least with him, there's size. Because, I understand that people wanted Cole Caulfield, Clayton Keller, maybe even Jason Robertson. There was a lot of deserving players, but I can understand maybe why you wouldn't go with them. Tage Thompson, that's a tough one to say. Like, I think that he would have been a valuable piece to have. And so what I'm trying to say overall is they really, I think, they play favorites a little bit. Like Brock Nelson making it as well. Look, not just the Rangers were bad. The tri-state players were bad. Brock Nelson had a bad icing that led to the winning goal. And just in general, he wasn't good. And this is someone who thinks that, I think when I watch Islander games, Brock Nelson, to me, I come away impressed by him more than almost anyone on the Islanders. Jack Hughes, really, really disappointing. And he's got the speed, he's got the skill, but in terms of, we know he's undersized, and his style of play really got snuffed out here. Like, he was one of the most disappointing players. Jack Hughes is one of the big young stars of the game, and he was awful. So again, not just the Rangers, but they had four players, but the Islander representative and Devil, not good either, and played a negative role in the loss. On that same thing, Austin Matthews. Now, on the one hand, Austin Matthews really did play a big role in the two goals the Team USA did score. Austin Matthews did provide a big role there. However, he, and he's someone I think that is known as being someone in the choke realm by Toronto Maple Leafs fans for the fact that he is like their star player, and they have not, taken. That team has not gone places. They've won one playoff series in the last however long it's been since Austin Matthews has been there. And he, had a really, really good chance to score in overtime. Binnington made a great save a couple of times, and give Binnington credit. But Austin Matthews on the winning goal by McDavid, Matthews, and to a lesser degree Fox, messed up on the coverage and left McDavid wide open. So Austin Matthews, his reputation continues to not be really one that he would want. And he had a chance to be the hero. That's the thing. If anyone on this USA team won, even if it were Chris Kreider, like, you're kind of a hero forever. I think about even like TJ Oshie on and that was the Olympics, but that was a preliminary round game where he was scoring all those shootout goals. But even the novice fan would know who TJ Oshie is for that reason. Same thing here. Like, if Vincent Trocheck scored, like that would have changed his career forever. For this alone, for how much hype it got. Didn't play out that way. Connor McDavid is the one that gets it, which is pretty big for him, because he hasn't won the cup yet. He really did a great, unbelievable job with Edmonton last season, 3-0 down against Florida and forcing in Game 7. So a little bit different there, but I do think that McDavid probably had a little bit of, like, if he hadn't come through, whereas like Crosby's bulletproof for everything he's done, right? Like, no one's gonna, like, Crosby has accomplished everything. McDavid, there's still more to go. but this is huge for him, I'm sure, in Canada to get that golden goal. I guess we'll call it a golden goal because that's what it is. Even though, again, for me, Olympics is still, as much as I thought this was a great tournament, the Olympics is still the number one for me, and I gotta think still for most fans. But it is really, really great that the NHL did incorporate this. So let's talk about the game. I've basically already done it for the most part. I'll say Connor Hellebuck. Wouldn't say Connor Hellebuck. I don't know, because the goalie is always going to be an interesting conversation. I don't think Connor Hellebuck lost the game, but I don't think he gave the USA a good enough chance to win either. It's one of those things where, yeah, I come away with him not really having a strong opinion. He probably could have been better, but he really, I don't know. I mean, McDavid was left wide open, so it's hard to kill him. Maybe the Sam Bennett, maybe that one. And I'm not sure if he saw the MacKinnon, the first. So Nathan MacKinnon wins the MVP, by the way, of this tournament. He scored the first goal. Not really sure if Hellebuck even saw that one. The Sam Bennett goal, maybe he was playing a little bit too deep in. But I guess for all of the notoriety that Connor Hellebuck has in the regular season, he certainly has never come through in the playoffs with Winnipeg. So that's kind of the problem there. And it leads to just a lot of interesting questions, I guess, going into the Olympics next year. This was kind of a test and a preview. And I think the roster may look a little bit different. Certainly, like those Ranger players, I don't think Chris Kreider, I'm confident that Chris Kreider will not be on next year's team. Vincent Trocheck, very much a bubble player, and one where I wouldn't be shocked if he wasn't on it. And then right now, JT Miller should be, you would think, unless things go really wrong. And then Adam Fox, I mentioned it before. I don't, I would say yes now, but it went from a pretty big Ranger contingent to really potentially not at all come next year. It'd be really, really interesting to see that. So Nathan MacKinnon gives Canada the lead 4:48 in. His fourth goal of the tournament from Thomas Harley and Sam Reinhart. Canada had injuries of their own, or at least illnesses. Josh Morrissey was a late scratch due to illness. He was an important part of their defense. Shea Theodore got hurt earlier in the tournament. Alex Pietrangelo was on the original roster and didn't make it. So their defense was kind of makeshift. I mean, Travis Sanheim, who is a good defenseman from the Philadelphia Flyers, like he had a pretty big role. It wasn't ideal. I mean, an older Drew Doughty was part of it. It's not the classic Canadian defenses we're used to. But with Canada, there's just so much firepower with McDavid and MacKinnon and still Crosby. And, it's a lot to contend with. It really is. I mean, when you have certain players that are like, and the USA, look, the USA had decent depth, but I felt like with Matthew Tkachuk getting hurt, USA had injuries of their own. Charlie McAvoy sadly gets hurt and was unable to play. He had to go to the hospital. It was a shoulder injury that led to an infection, and who knows what his future for the rest of the season is for the Boston Bruins. But I feel bad for him. Another Long Island player. I feel bad for him that he wasn't able to take place this, and this was in Boston. This was in his arena, and he wasn't able to play in it. So that was a big loss for Team USA. Jake Sanderson, in effect, took that spot. But for Canada, they had some issues too. Cale Makar didn't play in the first game between Canada and USA. He was in this game, which is a big step up, obviously. So anyway, MacKinnon gets that goal. It was a play where Werenski tries to get the puck to Jake Sanderson behind the net, but Sam Reinhart intercepts it. Sam Reinhart is another just really good Florida Panther player that doesn't probably even get enough. Reinhart's great. And so he is the one that intercepts it. And MacKinnon just kind of circles around the top, kind of, what he does, takes it to the middle of the ice and just fires a wrist shot, and it just goes through. Kind of just had eyes and went past Hellebuck to give Canada a 1-0 lead. I thought Canada had the better of the play in the first, but USA ties it up. Brady Tkachuk scores his third goal of the tournament, assisted by Austin Matthews. And this was a nice play by Matthews to get in there behind the net to get the puck. And Brady Tkachuk, who was just so impressive. If the Rangers were ever able to get their hands on him, that would be I don't see that happening, but it'd be very fortunate if they did. Because this guy, with Team USA, there was a few people that stood out in a very positive way, and Brady Tkachuk was one of them. Just a really tough as nails player that it's crazy. He hasn't played. Maybe he will this year with Ottawa, which would be at the Rangers' expense if they make the playoffs. But Brady Tkachuk to me would seem to be a very good playoff type player, similar to his brother Matthew. And Matthew Tkachuk was dealing with injury, and you would think that he'll probably be out for a little bit for the Florida Panthers. Luckily for them, they have the luxury with them being really securely in a playoff spot. They can kind of afford him to be out if he is. So that ties it up at 1. And that would be the score at the end of 1. USA, I think, gets their game going, and they take the lead at 7:32 of the second period. It would be a goal by Jake Sanderson. So interestingly, both goals by Team USA scored by Ottawa Senators. So not even a goal scored by an American team player in this game. Sanderson from Matthews. So Matthews another assist, and Zach Werenski as well gets the secondary assist. So and another play where Brady Tkachuk gets in on the forecheck. He doesn't get an assist, but he started this, and it leads to a goal. And Jake Sanderson's a very, very promising young player for Ottawa. But then the one penalty of the game is taken by Vincent Trocheck. He trips Sam Bennett. And so Sam Bennett ends up kind of, again, I think about some of these Florida Panthers and how they're kind of just, having beat the Rangers last year in the Eastern Conference Final and still kind of causing some minor issues and disturbances now. Bennett twice in this game, actually. This is the first one. He's tripped by Vincent Trocheck. Not Rangers. USA kills it off. But just a blatant penalty. Now, Trocheck was cross-checked, right before that, but they were not going to call much in this game. And you know what? I'd rather it be that way than everything being called. Let it be determined on the ice. Yes. Maybe did Canada get away with some calls here and there? Yes, they probably did. But to me, that's not much of a conversation piece. I think that this was officiated correctly, and the Trocheck penalty was absolutely deserved, but it is killed off. So USA keeps that 2-1 lead until the 14-minute mark of the second period. Sam Bennett scores his first goal of the tournament, assisted by Mitch Marner. And this was a play where Adam Fox tries to find JT Miller, and it's a misconnection. Not a good play by Fox, not a great play by Miller, and a bad back check by Brock Nelson, and not great defensive coverage by Adam Fox leads to Marner finding Bennett, who scores past Hellebuck, and it ties it up at 2. So, to that point, as much as Trocheck took the penalty and as much as I thought, just Ranger play wasn't great, it wasn't an effect in the game until this point. Now it is, because Fox and Miller are involved in a bad way, and Canada ties it up at 2. And that's the score going to the third period. And you kind of knew this game was destined for overtime. It's just the way it is. And that is what happened. And, third period was kind of in some ways safely played. The shots were not much. It was 8-4 USA. The shots decreased as regulation progressed. And in overtime, it really was the Jordan Binnington show. 5-on-5 overtime. Stanley Cup playoff rules, 20-minute, periods, and just, game's going to keep on going until a goal is scored. And Matthews specifically was robbed a couple of times by Binnington. It's amazing. His career is very interesting, where he won the Stanley Cup with the Blues in 2019. He is still on the St. Louis Blues. Is not a guy that really has great regular season numbers. I don't think many of us view him in a way as being one of the better goalies in the league. But when push comes to shove in big moments, this guy's come through time and time again. And that's what happened here. And there was a lot of criticism as far as him being the starter for Canada. He delivered. And what ends up happening, and we're not even getting into the lines, but what ends up being the third line, basically Matthew Tkachuk ends up not playing. Kreider as well, basically. Kreider, consider Kreider the 11th forward and consider Trocheck the 10th forward. And the third line ends up being JT Miller centering Brock Nelson and Jack Hughes. So a tri-state trifecta, if you will. JT Miller eventually gets off the ice, and it's a bad icing by Brock Nelson. Very unnecessary. He banks it off the glass and too strong. And then Jack Hughes, I understand it's overtime. It seemed like he had more to give in terms of beating out the icing. So Braden Point, beats him for the icing. And fans were upset, but it was the right call. To me, watching on TV, definite icing. And I was just surprised. I thought Jack Hughes had a little bit more in him to beat out that icing. So blame goes there as well to lead to a face-off in the defensive zone where Austin Matthews replaced JT Miller. Because like I said, Miller got off, and Adam Fox was still stuck on with, I believe it was Noah Hannafin, I think. and it's a faceoff that is won by McDavid versus Matthews. And eventually the puck goes around the boards, and Adam Fox couldn't get behind the net. That's first off, right? He could have maybe stopped it right there. It goes around, and bad communication by Fox and Austin Matthews, where Connor McDavid ends up being wide, wide open. So I'll try to describe it as best as I can. It's a face-off won by Canada. Um, Brock Nelson races over, but Makar just swings it around, finds Mitch Marner in the corner, who finds a wide open Connor McDavid right in the center, who easily scores with a really nice wrist shot past Connor Hellebuck. And so Adam Fox ends up at -2. And Team Canada beats Team USA 3-2 in overtime. So really, really disappointing overall. This was not a situation where I was like super invested in USA winning. Of course, I was watching the games. Really looking at it more from a Rangers lens. Like I said, more than anything, I wanted USA to win. The fact they didn't win, it's unfortunate. And now, sort of transitioning to the Rangers, it's a quick turnaround for these players. They're going to have 3 games in 4 nights and a back-to-back as well to start at Buffalo and at Pittsburgh Saturday, Sunday, and then Tuesday at the Islanders. That's going to be tough. Now, again, a lot of the team, hasn't played, right? So it's not as if it's like a team full of guys that have been just through the ringer. And plus, too, when you think about it, these players on this USA team did not have a big role. Like Chris Kreider barely played in this tournament, right? I mean, I think the concerns more lie in some ways as far as nicks and bruises and things like that with Trocheck, Miller, and Fox. But even those players played much, much, much less than they normally would. So I think it's more of you're hoping, if Trocheck is okay, he's the one I'd be worried about the most physically. It's more of the emotional toll that it took. That's more of the concern as far as going from this and the Rangers being in a very considerable big playoff push with 27 games left. They're going to have to find a way to keep the momentum going somehow, back in the NHL, this weekend and forward. So it'll be interesting to see what the effect is for some of these players, because I think there will be one. And I think there may be trends that come out of this. And we'll find out what they are, whereas Buffalo, for example, it's different for them. They didn't really have as many players in this tournament. So will it matter? I don't know, right? I mean, look, you still have, Artemi Panarin and Igor Shesterkin and another very key players, for the Rangers that, didn't play. So it may not have much of an effect, but nonetheless, a really exciting tournament, one that got just so much more eyeballs on it than I ever thought it would. And as me being, a really big hockey fan, that was nice. And, if USA won, I don't know, could that have maybe changed things moving forward? I don't know. I like to think the result of the game wasn't necessarily the big thing, more so just the action and the games itself. And the fact that you had this, classic overtime game can lead now to maybe more people, becoming hockey fans and watching the NHL. And it's a nice setup for next year's Olympics in Italy. Very much looking forward to that. That I'll be more invested in than this, because by then it will have been 12 years since NHL players have been in the Olympics, 2014 being the last one. So there you go. It was a tournament that brought a lot. The Rangers did not play well in it. The ones that, especially the ones on Team USA, very, very disappointing. They really did play, unfortunately, a big role in Team USA losing the championship game to Canada in overtime by a score of 3-2. The game-winning goal scored by Connor McDavid. It's kind of how you would want to draw it up if you are a Canada fan. So that's it for the break, and excited for maybe excited is a strong word, but looking forward to the Rangers playing again. And these are going to be some pretty big games down the stretch here. So we'll see what happens. But yep, Canada beats USA in overtime 3-2.